Hello, everyone. We are live in all of the places. I am Carol Williams with Williams Immigration. I am an immigration attorney headquartered in South Florida. I work with businesses and entrepreneurs and startups and families who are trying to navigate a very complicated U.S. immigration system. So I wanted to come and give you guys an update and then, as usual, answer some questions that you might have. So, super important update that came out Friday for Halloween. I think was it Friday? I think it was Friday. In any event, yes, it was Friday. So if you are working for a company and you've been waiting to file an H extension or an H, or an, you needed your LCA, you needed your perm to be able to be filed. The good news that came out Friday is that system operated by DOL, known as a flag system, that system is up and running again as of Friday. It was a very quiet launch again of that system. So we are super excited to see that Department of Labor put on their website, however, that their responses are going to be slow. So I take that to mean they are not sort of fully back up and running as an agency because of the government shutdown, but they are processing LCAs and prevailing wages and accepting submissions of perm applications. So for my employment-based folks, that is super huge news. Not so pleasant news is for individuals that are here in the U.S. that have employment authorization documents. It used to be just early last week, if you timely filed your EAD renewal, that you would automatically have 540 days extension, because the Immigration Service realized it was taking them a little bit longer than usual to process those. So they did away with that. The announcement came on Wednesday. So essentially anything, I think it was received on or after Friday, was no longer going to get the benefit of that 540-day extension. So essentially that notice came out of nowhere, and we weren't really given any time to prepare for that. So here's where we are. So no automatic extensions when you've timely filed a new EAD. So if your EAD expires, let's say tomorrow, you file today, that's considered timely filed. And previously you would have gotten 540-day automatic extension of your work authorization. Now you do not. So here's some very quick math. The current processing time for an employment-based EAD, so not a family-based, not TPS, not anything else, but an employment-based EAD, is currently taking 7 months. That's how long it's taking them to process. That's what's on their website, 7 months. However, we can only file 6 months in advance of the expiration. So we have a month gap, and that month gap is probably for several people going to lead to a month gap in work authorization, which means for companies and employees, that person is going to have to come off of payroll. Excuse me, it cannot go back onto payroll until the renewal EAD has been approved. So if you are an employer, I urge you to keep people on their H's and L's to the extent possible, so that they have another method of work authorization. And if you are working pursuant to just an EAD that lets you work for anybody, anywhere, anytime, then you really need to think about what happens. One, from the employment side, what happens if you have an employee that needs to be taken off payroll for a month? What are you doing? What is your plan internally inside the company? And if you are the employee, what is your financial plan for you and or your family if you need to come off of payroll, let's say in 8 months, or let's say you just got your EAD, think ahead on that in terms of your personal family finances, because if the processing times do not get any quicker. Some folks are going to have a gap in their work authorization. That's just sort of, unfortunately, very simple math. And those of you that know me really well know I don't really math, so if I can do the math, it says quite a bit. So those are kind of the two big updates coming out of last week. The no auto extension on the AEDs was significant, and the coming back online of the flag system was also very significant, but very good news. So if you guys have any questions, I am happy to see if I can answer them. Before I do that, as I always say, while I am an immigration attorney, I am not your immigration attorney. We do not have an attorney-client relationship. If you'd like to work with us, you're more than welcome to click the link in the bio, schedule a consult. We can chat about the particulars of your situation. All my clients start that way. We all start with a get to know you consult call. Let's see what questions we have. If I checked no, Stacy Mitchell, I think it's Mitchell, is asking if I checked no on the public charge question on my 485, could this impact my marriage case negatively? If you are subject to the public charge, the officer will most likely have some questions for you. Do I think it's a reason to deny your case? I mean, probably not, but the officer will definitely have questions as to, why you checked no instead of yes. It could be a typo. It could be that it was difficult to understand. It could be that you didn't know. I don't know, but I always say, in the green card interview, when you're sitting in the office and chatting with the officer, that is the time to have that type of conversation. I don't know your specific situation. So it may be something where, if there are other things in the application that need to be amended, it may be, it's kind of an analysis, right, that I would do. Like, I would want to see the entire application. I want to see what else maybe needs to be amended and why, and then it may be a matter of, uploading or sending in amended forms or just waiting to the interview. But it really kind of depends. But I don't think that in and of itself would cause a denial, especially if you met the public charge financial requirements. But that'll certainly be up to the officer at the end of the day. What else do we have for questions? Everybody's still maybe in a Halloween sugar coma. Ashley is asking whether or not the rules change from admin to admin. So I'm guessing by admin you mean by White House administration. So that's actually a really great question. Yes and no. Like the big rules, like the big law books, right, that give us, here's the law. These books are thick. So generally, by and large, those don't change a whole lot from admin to from White House administration to White House administration. But there's always going to be some changes whenever the White House changes hands. So whenever there is a new occupant in the White House, policies will change. So yeah, that happens all the time. This current administration, we're seeing a lot of executive orders, proclamations, that kind of thing. We're not seeing, I guess we are seeing some significant like rule changes as well. But the entire immigration set of laws that doesn't change by and large from president to president. Each president has their own priorities. This is a good way to put it. They have their own priorities, and so they look at the body of law that is impacted by their specific priorities. So the current White House administration has said on day one, quite literally from day one, that they are very focused on increased security vetting. So what we find is that a lot of the changes being made have a security explanation to them. In prior presidents, their priority may have been a little bit more narrow when it came to security measures based on the information that they received when they first took office, and then information that they continued to see as they were in office. So part of it certainly depends on the current White House administration's priorities, and it also depends on what's sort of happening real time in the world and in the U.S. So I hope that answer was helpful. One second. Okay. Scroll down. I have an interview coming up and I'm really freaking out. So for interviews, the interview is it's a conversation, an important conversation. I'm not minimizing the importance of the conversation, but it's a conversation, right? By and large, the majority of officers that I have dealt with as outside counsel, as I was sitting next to my clients, were respectful and nice, right? And well prepared for the interview. So your life, your story, what you put in the application. So from that perspective, I would say you don't really need to be nervous, right? Like what you put in the application. But again, it is a conversation. It is an important conversation, but it is one that I think a lot of people freak out about. And then when they're done with their interview, they're like, oh, that wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it was, right? Which honestly, my saying that probably means nothing to you on the front end of your conversation, the front end of your interview. But I always tell people, go into the interview, be honest, tell the truth. Often, all the time, the lie itself is, what harms an application. If there's stuff in the application that you think needs to be amended, or the officer, misstates a fact, it's perfectly okay to be like, oh, wait a minute, that's not actually right. But I think you go in there and you do the best you can. You be honest about it. I generally prep my clients, and we do, they have the option of doing a mock interview if they want to do that, just to get them sort of ready so that they know what to expect. Some of my clients do a mock interview, some don't. I've had clients that have been with me since they were international students. And they got married, so they've done a few rounds of interviews, right? But it's usually my folks that are like super nervous on their first interview. They just don't know what to expect. So we'll do a mock interview for them. We actually do mock interviews for folks that aren't our clients, as long as they can give us a copy of the application that they submitted, so that we can really tailor that interview, that mock interview to them. But I think without knowing you, I think you'll be fine. I think you just got to go in there, positive attitude, be you, just be you, and go in there, and good luck, but I think you'll be fine. Let me see here. Waiting time on VAWA, I have no idea. I have not had to look that up recently, so I don't know that. Let's see here. Let's do question one. Okay. Oh, here we go. Can you get a lease letter notarized if you can't be on the lease? You can certainly get a letter from the apartment complex if for some reason you are not allowed to be on the lease. That would be fine. I would question why you can't be on the lease first of all. So your question sort of brings up more questions than I really have answers to, but I would want to know why you can't be on the lease and what is the situation surrounding that. But yes, you can certainly get a letter from the rental office indicating that you in fact live wherever it is that you live. Yeah, I don't know why. I don't think that would be, in that one particular instance, I don't think that would be an issue. But I have questions as to why you cannot be on a lease. Most apartments or in condos that are leasing want to know everybody that is living in the unit. And so if you are not on lease, I think that's going to be, and you get a letter, I think that may be something that the officer keys in on and wants to know why. If you were my client, I would want to know why so that I'm not blindsided before we go into an interview. Let's see. Passed my N400 test. No decision made. Officer said it's not from my end. What do I do? No criminal record. You wait. You wait. Work has to be done after the interview. Work has to be done on a file after the interview. So it'll depend on the workflow of that particular office, that particular local office. It may have to go to a supervisor. It may have to touch 5 hands. It may have to touch 2 hands. It may have to touch 6 hands before the actual approval is before the file is actually approved. They may be waiting on biometrics. They may be waiting on or the report from the biometrics, meaning that they may be waiting on the background checks. They may have opted to do the interview before the full background check was before they received the full report of the background check. So, wait. There's, now if you're telling me your interview was like 2 years ago, then that's a whole different can of worms. But if your interview is relatively recent, it's a game of hurry up and wait. The government is shut down. So there are things that flow into this process that come from outside of USCIS. So if they are waiting on one of those things, one of those action items, then you're going to have to wait, and there's absolutely nothing you can do to speed it up. Understandably, that's not what you wanted to hear. But if you guys have followed me for any length of time, I try to give you what I think is accurate information and sort of the reason behind it. Let's see here. Let's see here. Any idea why USCIS is taking forever to approve advanced parole for DACA? I have no idea. My office typically doesn't really handle DACA cases, so I don't actually even know what the processing time is for advanced parole for DACAs. I do know there was a court case, so I know DACAs were on sort of like some of them weren't being processed for a while, so that could have had something to do with it, but it's not something that I routinely handle in my practice. Um, let me see here. Any update on I-130? I applied for my husband who is not in this country, and it's been 11 months. So here's what I would recommend. I would recommend that you go to the USCIS website and check the processing times. I don't know if your husband is considered your immediate relative or if he is considered to be part of a preference category. So I-130s in general are taking a while. So 11 months does not at all freak me out about an immediate relative I-130, which again, understandably, that is not what you want to hear. I know that. But if you go to the USCIS website and check the processing times, that will give you what CIS is telling us is 80% of the similar case types. 80% of the case types are being processed in that amount of time. So it just depends on what kind of case was filed, or in your case, what kind of I-130 was it? A preference I-130? Was it an immediate relative I-130? And what office is currently processing the case? But 11 months on an I-130 right now does not shock me in the least. And you guys, we have to remember the government is closed. While USCIS is open, while they're open, there are action items in their process flow that feed into them from other agencies that are not most likely prioritizing processing immigration cases, right? So that's that's going to be a part of it. Somebody is saying Mishli 124 days have passed since my interview, no RFE and no action yet. Yep. I'm not going to throw up a red flag on that. I don't know what kind of case it is. I don't know what office it's in. And I don't even know what kind of case it is. So once you've had an interview, that is not the end of the story in terms of the processing of your case. It is the end of the story in terms of what you see, where you are involved. It is not the end of the processing. Things need to be done on the back end. If the agency doesn't have everything that they need to approve a case, they're not going to approve it. I don't care if it's 300 days, right? So 124 days, there are other folks that will scream and yell, oh my God, that's way too long. That's way too long. I am just not one of these people. We have to give the officers a chance to do their jobs. Processing times typically will slow down at the end of the year and during the summer. In the summer, because immigration officers are human, just like you and I, they have kids, and that is a great time for everyone to go on vacation that has children. That's typically why travel is more expensive in the summer. Processing times also go up towards the end of the year because everybody celebrates at least one or two holidays and they take time off. Processing times also go up because government employees have use or lose vacation time. And they're not going to lose their vacation time the same way you or I would not want to lose our vacation time. So not all of their vacation time rolls over to the next year. So processing times typically will slow down a little bit. But if someone goes out on a 2-week vacation and then we come back to like a 3-day holiday and your file is on their desk, guess what? Your case isn't moving for 2.5 weeks at a minimum. And that is something that is hard to fathom and hard to process and all the things, and nobody likes it, and I get it, but that is just the reality. So processing times are not always going to be as quick as we would like them to be. And goodness knows I am certainly not the most patient person in the world. So that is certainly what could be happening, but that that doesn't really kind of freak me out. Why does it take USCIS FDNS years to investigate marriage fraud and other violations? I would guess it is because of the priorities that are set inside the agency. You know, so I can't tell you how or why they set their priorities the way that they do. But that's just how they work, and and there's a lot going on inside the agency, right? There's a lot that goes into processing cases, which doesn't 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 get talked about or discussed or seen outside of the agency. But there's a lot that goes into processing a case. The agency is not full of a ton of people who just go in every day with the sole mission of denying cases. Like that's not what happens inside the agency. There are really, really smart folks that are processing cases, who go to work every day and do their best. And then, they do their part of the work, and then they pass it on to the next person who does their part. They pass it on to the next person who does the next part. So it is an entire process flow that takes time. It takes time, especially on the family applications. Does advanced parole really allow people to come back into the U.S.? That is what advanced parole was designed for. Advanced parole is travel permission. It allows people to leave the U.S. and re-enter. I want to delay citizenship oath because my wife and son are waiting for consular processing. I mean, if you want to delay your oath, I think there are instructions on the form that you receive on how and why you can delay it and reschedule. Let's see here. Oh, we're not too fast. I-130 and 601A. My husband did his biometric in 2024 and still nothing. Are we waiting for Juarez? I don't know if your 601A is approved, but 601As are taking a long time. Last time I spoke with a colleague about them. So I don't know if they're taking 20, and you didn't say sort of when in 2024. That could be like, it could be like the end of 24, the beginning of 24, that could be like essentially like a little over a year, or, almost 2 years. So I don't know, but I do know, having just spoken with a colleague, that 601s are taking a long time. Let's see here. Let's see here. It's hard. What is the normal processing time for a 765 Form CO9 category concurrent filing with 485 at NVC? I don't know. That's an incredibly specific question. I would go on to the USCIS website, and it will absolutely give you that information. It will tell you what the processing time is. Hold on. If you go to USCIS.gov, you scroll down on their main page, everything is in blocks, and you go to manage your case. Click on the second bullet point down. It says check processing times. Verify that I'm a human. Let's see here. Verify that I'm a human. Scroll down. It'll give you 3 boxes to go down. Select, the first one is the form. The second one is the form category. Second one is Field Officer Service Center. You click Get Processing Time. After that, it will tell you what 80% of similar cases are being processed as. What happens if my spouse divorces me before my USCIS interview? That's a problem. Wait, hold on. Where'd your question go? Sorry, hold on. So there we go. So I don't actually know why I need to see the question or answer it, but I do. So if you get divorced before your USCIS interview, the basis of your application is sort of really taken out from under you. So it really depends on what happened as to whether or not, and why the divorce happened, as, will sort of determine whether or not there are other avenues that you can take to potentially pivot and or save your green card application. So that is something where I would say, if you are in that situation now, or you think you are going to be in that situation, then I would say that you should speak with an immigration attorney. You're welcome to call my office. We're happy to have a consult with you. But I would definitely bring someone in on that. That is one. It's you're potentially getting a divorce or already being divorced is hard enough emotionally as it is. But to then try to sort through a legal process makes it that much harder. So that would be my suggestion there. Does VAWA take 34 months? I have no idea. My office doesn't do VAWA all day every day, so that's not a processing time that I generally tend to know off the top of my head. If you have an attorney who's telling you how long it takes, then I would listen to your attorney. Someone is asking a question about their friend's asylum case pending past 6 years, came as a minor, has a final hearing, any approval odds? I have no idea what the approval odds, because I have not seen the application itself. Would I recommend traveling with advanced parole with this government? So this is a good question, and this is probably something I say on all of my lives. Sometimes the question is not can you, many times the question is should you. Can someone travel on advanced parole? Sure, that's what it was designed for. Is it recommended that someone travel on advanced parole right now? That's a whole different question, which I don't know without knowing their individual circumstances. Folks that have criminal history anywhere in the world, folks that have an outstanding deportation order, that is an absolute no. I would not recommend that they travel. But there's a whole lot of other sort of very nuanced questions that I would ask and information that I would need. So traveling on advanced parole or traveling on your green card right now is a conversation that I have individually with all of my clients. And it's a time for us to update information if we haven't spoken in a little bit. But that's, the question is not can you, the question is should you. And that really depends on your individual circumstances. Someone is asking, how do we get a consultation with you? Click the link in the bio and follow the instructions. And that will get you on my calendar. Thanks for the hearts, guys. I do appreciate it. And the rose. I saw the roses come in. What else do we have? Alex, you're very welcome. What else do we have? Hold on a second. My fiance is coming to the U.S. On a K1 this year. Congratulations. That is great news. What should we do? What should we do? File and focus on apart from the marriage. I don't understand your question. What should we do? File and what should we do? File and focus on apart from the marriage. I don't understand your question. Um, so if they're coming in on a K1, you've got to get married within 90 days. I mean, and then after that, you can file the adjustment. Yeah. So I'm not quite sure what exactly your question is, but that is sort of where I would go with that. Someone is asking, how was my experience? How was your experience working with the organization? I'm assuming you mean USCIS. It was great. I liked working with USCIS. It was great to. First of all, there's some very, very cool people, very, very smart folks within inside the agency. So it was great to work with them. It was great to have an opportunity to write laws, write policy, um, see the process from the inside, and to really understand the work that goes into each and every application. I have a tremendous amount of respect for the folks that work in the agency and the process that it takes from the time an application physically arrives in the building until a decision is spit out on the other end. That is a tremendous amount of work. It is an incredible logistics process flow. And there are a lot of people that work really, really hard every day. So I enjoyed my time within the agency. So I hope that answers your question. Do I think the visa bulletin will do I think the visa bulletin will going to change this month? Meaning this month, November. The November visa bulletin's already out for EB3 unskilled. The November visa bulletin is already out. I can't tell you. I remember what it is for EB3 unskilled, but it's already out. The visa bulletin usually comes out around the middle of the month prior, sometimes a little sooner, especially if it's September. We're looking at October, which is a new fiscal year, but it's already out. Now, if by this month you mean December, I have no idea. It's the visa. Sorry, let me back up. I have no idea what the December visa bulletin will look like. Period. End of thought. The visa bulletin itself is handled by the Department of State and USCIS. And so they collaborate in terms of the count of how many green cards have been issued and how many visas have been issued. And so they do all of the mathematical, statistical, whatever, and then give us the next visa bulletin. So from one month to the next, I have no idea whether or not any of those categories are going to change. Sometimes if you read the text in the visa bulletin, they will give us sort of a teaser, if you will, of what may happen the next month. But I have my crystal ball gives me a big fat 0 on what's going to happen in the next visa bulletin. I filed an I-130 like a week ago. Do you recommend filing a K1 visa as well? I have no idea. I have no idea what you're trying to do. I have no idea. That would be a strategy call during a consultation. So I don't know. How long taking for N400 after biometric reused? And thank you. Completely depends on the office that your case is being processed in. I would recommend that you go onto the USCIS website and pull down the processing times for your local office. One office can process quicker or slower than the next office. All completely depends on workload. So, you not having to go back in, or you not having to go in for biometrics certainly makes it easier on the agency, but whether or not that speeds up your time is a whole different question. But yeah, it'll really depend on the current processing time of the local office that has jurisdiction over your case. How long can they have an I-45 in active reviewing state? Oh, you are not going to like my answer. For as long as it takes them to get you an approval, right? As long as it takes them to get all the information that they need. I would rather be in an active reviewing state than be in administrative processing. So will completely depend on, again, the office that is processing the case. Is there a legal time frame? Like, are they bound, let's say, or are they required to process your 45 in like 60 days, 90 days, 2 years? No, there is no such thing. So like you want them reviewing the case. You want it approved such that there are no questions afterward. So yeah, it's just, but I would check on the USCIS website and see what the processing times are to see if you're beyond the processing times. Let's see here. We filed a 752. Do you mean a 751? 2 weeks late on accident. We write an affidavit about some personal family reasons, but I don't see anything else. Yeah, if you mean a 751, filing a 751 late is not the absolute end of the world. You will have to explain why it was late. That's not something that is out of the ordinary. When you get to the interview, the officer may say, like, what happened? You filed this late. Be prepared to provide that explanation. But it's not the end of the world. One second. Looks like N400 filing before October 20th. Are you getting the 100 or 128 questions? I think you're getting the 100 questions, but I'd have to look it up. I haven't committed that date to memory yet. I think you're getting 100 questions, but if you go onto the USCIS website and you search N400, you search naturalization, it will tell you it'll tell you whether or not you should be studying the 100 or the 128 questions. And that's actually a really important question. You want to make sure that you're studying the right questions. Someone's asking for a T visa. What makes a solid case? I've never done a T visa, so I can't actually tell you. I have no idea. I have plenty of colleagues that do T visas all day, every day, but I have no idea. That's not something I've ever had to deal with and help someone with. But let me say this. In terms of what makes any case solid, good, approvable, whatever phrases you'd like to use, are clearly showing that an individual meets the criteria with solid documents, right? I tell my clients all the time, especially for my employment-based clients, but this holds true for family-based applications as well. Doesn't matter what I say. Doesn't matter how cute and punctuated my cover letter might be. Doesn't matter how amazing my brief might be, right? If I don't have anything that is solid documentation, like paper, something I can print that shows how and why you meet the application, you meet the criteria of the visa or the green card or the citizenship application, it's not going to be a solid / good / approvable case. So again, I've never done a T visa. So I don't know what, I can't even tell you what documents I would like to have, right? For a solid T visa, but for any case, I always give my clients a document list, and I tell them, I was like, this is a document list, and I'm pretty sure you don't have everything on it. These are lists that I've developed over the years that have like my ideal like unicorn case, right? And no one has ever given me all those documents, and yet people get approved, right? Immigration is a lot about, and the law in general is telling your story. But in immigration, you have to tell your story through documents that show that you meet the criteria. So I have no idea what a perfect T case looks like, but I bet it's fairly document intensive. So I would work with an attorney that does T cases really kind of all day, every day. So I know that is not at all what you wanted from me, but that's kind of what I have for you on that one. What is solid documentation in my opinion? Solid documentation, in my opinion, shows that you meet the criteria. So if you need to show that you are married, if you need to show that there's a familial relationship, right? If you need to show that you are divorced, a marriage certificate, a divorce certificate, a birth certificate, long form of everything, and solid documentation on those things that are what I consider like loosey-goosey and like soft criteria, although they're very, so if you're trying to show that you have a marriage that is not based on fraud, right? There's no top 10 pieces of documentation that work for everybody, because everybody's marriage looks different. Why does your marriage look the way it does? What do you two do? I say all the time, you don't have to be living together to get an approved marriage-based green card. You do not. There are 1,010 reasons why a couple who is madly in love and building a life together might live in different places. You might live in different cities. You might live in different houses across the way in the same city. The good documentation will tell me why. Is it a cultural reason? Is one of you in school in the northern part of the city and the other one has, already had a home that was purchased in the southern part of the city, but the commute is like 2 hours or 2.5 hours during rush hour? And so it just made sense to get the one that was in school in the northern part of the city an apartment. Sure, right? So if that's my client, I'm going to document how long it takes to get from point A to point B. I'm going to document what your class schedule is. I'm going to show that it doesn't make sense for you to be leaving class at 8 p.m. to drive an hour or an hour and a half home. Like, that is a decision that y'all made within your marriage, and I get that. But what documents can I prove that with, right? So a lot of times it is looking at an individual's way of life and then coming up with a tailored set of documents. So generally what I do is I give people sort of my standard list that I love, and then we talk about how they're living their life. Someone comes back to me and says, well, I don't have, I don't have a lease agreement. We don't have a mortgage. We don't, another one that comes up a lot is, well, we don't have a joint bank account. I'm going to ask why, right? Not because I'm nosy, not because I'm being judgmental, but because I know that immigration is going to be like, well, why? Right? And then you're going to tell me, and then I'm going to say, okay, if this is cultural, if it's just practical, if it's just, I'm like, it could be that in your culture, like adults that are married never merge their bank accounts. Okay, give me something that says that. Give me something that says that. Give me some sort of something that explains your culture, right? Because that is a very different culture than the US. But that's what makes working with my clients so amazing, is that I learn things about different cultures, and that makes it really amazing, right? Like, that makes it fun, that makes it insightful for me. And it could just be like you personally just don't believe in marrying, in joint bank accounts. Like, that just marrying funds might be so incredibly horrifying to you. Okay, tell me why. And then what other documentation do we have, right? So it's really sometimes thinking, and sometimes it requires us to think outside the box in terms of documentation. But solid, good documentation shows me how you meet the criteria, tells me what your story is, so that I can then present it in such a way that your story is clear through documents to the immigration service. So I hope that was helpful. Um, what else? What else do we have here? What do I have to do tonight? I have 4 more things I have to do tonight, so I'm going to have to jump off here soon. FOIA says I-45 approved in 2024, yet USCIS website. Yet USCIS website says I-45 processing. What should I do? I would ping USCIS and ask them. I would make sure that the receipt number is the same for what is going on in your FOIA results and what is currently showing as still processing. If they are the same, then, and you have not received an approval notice, I would reach out to USCIS. That's what I would do. Let me see here. Thanks for the follow, guys. I appreciate it. Waiting for an interview in July. They canceled after 4 hours. Still no reschedule. I would reach back out to them. Do we join all accounts or at least one that is used to pay the bills? That depends on how y'all want to live your life. There is applications get approved all day, every day without there being a joint bank account. I tell my clients this: live your life the way you want to live your life. It's my job to explain how you are living your life meets the requirements. So do you have to have a joint bank account? No. If you want to have a joint bank account that you're actively using, then get a joint bank account that you're actively using. But I will tell you this: getting a joint bank account just for the purposes of satisfying USCIS and never using that bank account is more of a red flag than just simply not having a joint bank account. Right? Because when you have a joint bank account and you're not actually using it, USCIS assumes that the only reason you have it is to fulfill this checklist in your mind. So if you're going to have a joint bank account, then go all in, have a joint bank account and use it. But if you're not going to use it, then don't do it, right? Like, live your life the way you want to live your life. And then if that is a question during your interview, then that's a question that then that's a question that you answer. That's a conversation that you have. But I never tell my clients to just go out and get a joint bank account. Citizenship interviews is ICE stopping people. So is ICE showing up at some offices and detaining people? Absolutely. Like, that is all over the news. So the answer to that is yes. Are they showing up at citizenship interviews, at green card interviews? Possibly, yes. I don't know when they're going to show up. We don't know when they're going to show up to an interview. If somebody has an outstanding deportation order, there is a chance that they may show up. If someone is in the U.S. without status, there is a chance ICE may show up. Or there is a chance ICE may not show up, and you go in, you have your interview, you get approved, and you're done. So it really, I don't know the movements of ICE. I can't tell you where they're going to be. But yes, ICE can show up at the local office. But to be very clear, this is not new. This ICE showing up at local offices, this is not new. ICE has always been able to do this. They just haven't necessarily put it in the news cycle, but this has always been able to happen and has happened. So I don't want y'all to think that this is something new that ICE is doing. It is absolutely not new. CO9, so adjustment-based EADs right now are taking roughly about 7 months. So when you say taking so long, the so long part is very relative. They're currently taking about 7 months. I just literally had to look that up. Processing times are dependent on the type of work and the office that they are being processed in. And if they have a larger workload in one office than another, then it's going to take longer out of that office with a higher workload. But I'm a fairly impatient person myself, and immigration is never going to approve everything same day, which is what I would love, right? Which is what you would love, but it doesn't happen that way. When you're requesting an expedited 485 for military enlistment, how often are they approved? I don't know. I've never requested one, so that I don't know. What is the processing time for a J1 hardship waiver? I have no idea. I've not done a J1 hardship waiver recently, so I don't even have any sort of active case file info on that one. Yeah, but I don't see any more questions, you guys. So it has been fun as always. lots of good questions tonight. I totally appreciate your time. I hope everybody is not in a sugar coma based on Halloween candy. I resisted the urge personally to go and get my half off day after Halloween candy. I feel very proud of myself for that. Doesn't mean I won't be there tomorrow, though. Just full disclosure. But I am Carol Williams with Williams Immigration. I'm a former USCIS adjudicator out of headquarters. We work with families and businesses and entrepreneurs and startups who are navigating our U.S. immigration system. So if you want to work with us, you are welcome to schedule a consult. You can just click the link in the bio. We're headquartered in sunny South Florida, but we work with clients in all 50 states, in Washington, D.C., and internationally. I will be back, I think, tomorrow. Let me check my calendar. I'm pretty sure I'll be back tomorrow. Yep, I'll be back tomorrow, 7-ish p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This has been great. I will chat with y'all later. Have a great evening, everybody. And we'll chat later. And I try to bring updates and whatnot with me when I come. So bye, guys.